I got fined for drinking coffee. No, seriously. I wish I was making this up, but it's as real as the ceramic mug I was holding that morning. One minute, I was minding my own business, watching the sun cut through the sleepy mist on our street, and the next, my life was turned upside down by a clipboard-wielding tyrant in khaki pants. You ever have a moment where you just know something as dumb as it feels is about to get a whole lot dumber? Yeah, that happened. They told me it was about maintaining uniformity, as if me sipping coffee was a threat to civilization. I checked the rules, I double-checked. Nowhere did it say no coffee, or no joy, or no being a person in your own house. It wasn't loud, wasn't messy, just me, sitting there with my mug like I'd done 100 times before. But now, suddenly, I was the problem. And what killed me wasn't even the fine itself. It was the silence. Everybody else just stared, looking anywhere but at me, not a word in protest. You know what I mean? That's what scared me the most. Because it stopped being about coffee real fast. Something was off, and nobody wanted to say it out loud. You ever think your morning routine, something as harmless as breathing, could land you in a war with your HOA? Because I sure didn't. Every day, 7:30 sharp, I'd pour myself a cup of not even fancy coffee, head out to the porch, laptop on my knee, the street quiet except for birds and the occasional overzealous sprinkler. I'm a graphic designer, work from home, so those 15 minutes of fresh air were my sanity. That Tuesday started just like all the others, sun warm, not too bright, me catching up on emails and thinking life was predictable, maybe even a little boring. That's when I heard the click of heels. Marjorie Briggs, our HOA president, appeared at the end of my driveway like she'd just teleported in from some sitcom about suburban nightmares. She's the type, you know the type, hair never moves even in a tornado, khakis pressed so sharp they could probably cut paper, eyes that miss nothing and forgive even less. Clipboard in one hand, a little color wheel in the other, she looked ready for battle. I'd seen her before, measuring people's lawns or snapping pictures of mailboxes that didn't fit the neighborhood aesthetic, but she'd never actually talked to me. "Good morning, Nathan," she said, voice sticky sweet like expired honey. She started snapping pictures of me, of my mug, like I'd been caught committing a crime. You ever feel like you're the punchline to a joke everyone else isn't on? That's how it felt. She held up the color wheel to my coffee, comparing the shade to the chart like she was conducting some weird science experiment. Then, with this flourish, she handed me a violation notice, already printed out, mind you, stating that my brown liquid beverage, visible from public areas, makes the neighborhood look bad. Section 12.4, Aesthetic Presentation, whatever that means. I just laughed. What else do you do when reality gets this ridiculous? You're fining me for drinking coffee on my own porch. I asked, not really expecting an answer. And that's when I made my first mistake. I laughed a little too hard, gestured with my mug, and a couple drops splashed onto her precious violation notice. She looked at me like I'd set her paperwork on fire. "That's destruction of official HOA documentation," she snapped. "Another $15 fine." She took more pictures, evidence, apparently. Just then, my wife Emily came out, coffee in hand, robe half-tied, looking at us both like she'd walked in on a circus. Emily's the pragmatic one, the neighborhood's party planner, the one who keeps the block together. She took in the scene, the wet violation notice, me, Marjorie, and just shook her head. "Everything okay out here?" she asked, though from her face, she already knew the answer. Marjorie pounced. "Actually, you're in violation too," she said, handing Emily her own fine. "Matching set for husband and wife, how sweet. Beverage display ordinance." Emily looked at her coffee, then back at Marjorie, and finally at me, and I could see her cycling through disbelief, confusion, and landing firmly on annoyed. She asked, slowly, "Are you telling me that drinking coffee on our own front porch is against the rules?" Marjorie nodded, so proud, as if she'd solved world peace. Brown beverages are visually disruptive. They don't fit the community image. Emily almost threw her cup at her, but took a deep breath and muttered, "Maybe you'll find a new hobby, like collecting garden gnomes." Sarcasm thick as fog. Marjorie either didn't notice or just didn't care. She finished writing, handed Emily the notice, and warned us that she'd be monitoring compliance, moving forward. Then she walked off, leaving us there with our illegal coffee cups and a creeping sense of unreality. Are we living in a neighborhood or a police state? I muttered, staring at the violation. The words sounded official, the fine was real, but the reason, no brown beverages, just felt like something from a dystopian satire. Emily went back inside, probably to make more coffee and deal with the madness. I stayed outside, sipping what had just become the most rebellious cup of coffee I'd ever had. And that's when I realized, this wasn't about coffee. It was about control. I had no idea how far Marjorie was willing to go. 2 days later, I found out. The emergency HOA meeting, supposedly to discuss community beverage standards, was packed. Marjorie stood at the front, in a navy blazer, stack of papers, looking like she was running for office. She presented a full slideshow, beverage visibility and property values, a comprehensive analysis. There were charts, graphs, photos of other neighborhoods, some with people drinking from clear cups, high property value, others with brown beverages, declining value. It was so surreal, I half expected a hidden camera to pop out. I raised my hand. Marjorie, I checked the original HOA documents. There's nothing about beverage color. Other neighbors nodded. I thought maybe sanity would prevail. But she was prepared. Neighborhood standards must evolve, she said. What worked 5 years ago doesn't serve us today. She showed slides, referenced studies about visual cohesion, argued that visible colored beverages hurt market appeal. The room got tense. Some board members objected, but then, mid-meeting, I saw her whisper something to Tom, the treasurer. His face went pale, then he just nodded. When the vote came, 4 in favor, 3 against, the new Community Beverage Standards Ordinance became law. Walking home, I felt the weight of something bigger than just an overzealous rule. People weren't confused. They were scared. Greg, my neighbor, leaned in and whispered. She made me get rid of my porch swing. Said yellow cushions were too aggressive. I started seeing it everywhere. Mailboxes, flowers, furniture. Everyone living in fear of stepping out of line. So I did the only thing I could think of. I organized a rebellion. If you can call a synchronized coffee hour a rebellion. Texted all the neighbors I could. Said, bring your biggest, brownest beverage. 8 a.m. Sunday. Let's see what she does when everyone's a violator. Next morning, our street looked like a coffee-themed parade. Giant mugs, neon tumblers, chocolate milk in clear pitchers, kids with iced coffee. Marjorie came out, saw 30 neighbors sipping away, and just froze. She started snapping pictures, yelling, "This is a violation. I'll fine every one of you." Tried calling the cops. They told her, politely, it wasn't actually illegal. The math didn't work for her. 1 clipboard, 30 residents. Then she disappeared and came back with cease and desist letters from a law firm. Real letterhead, multiple pages, legal threats. That cooled things down quick. Nobody wanted a lawsuit over a mug of coffee. Emily and I went inside, but something about those documents stuck with me. One of them had a file name. Kiosk Proposal Final.pdf. Why would a coffee rebellion provoke a kiosk proposal? Greg dug deeper. Turns out, Marjorie had filed a permit for a commercial coffee kiosk 2 weeks before my first violation. Her business plan literally called for creating demand through supply restriction. That is, ban porch coffee, so her kiosk is the only legal option. She'd been paying herself consulting fees, using HOA funds, calling it community development. The deeper we looked, the uglier it got. Emails to board members about clearing porch obstacles, texts with a developer about exclusive service rights, even architectural drawings for a full-scale coffee stand at the park entrance. She'd been paying herself out of our dues for months. The next emergency meeting, Greg and I laid it all out. Business permit, consulting payments, voice recordings, everything. The room erupted. Residents who'd been fined, intimidated, threatened with obscure violations. They realized it was all just a smokescreen for her personal profit. Even Tom admitted he'd been threatened with special assessments if he didn't vote her way. Janet, the new board president, demanded restitution and a public apology. Greg, with a wicked grin, suggested she deliver it while serving free coffee on her own lawn, community service for the coffee tyrant. And so, every Saturday for 2 months, Marjorie served free coffee to every resident she'd find. Kids lined up for selfies, neighbors joked about suburban justice. Greg live-streamed the whole thing. The beverage ban was rescinded, replaced by a new tradition, monthly porch coffee day. What began as one person's obsession with control turned into a festival of rebellion. Brown mugs everywhere, neighbors chatting, kids laughing, Marjorie pouring coffee with a smile she couldn't quite fake. Sitting on my porch, mug in hand, Emily beside me, I realized something. Control wears a polite face. It creeps in when you're not looking, one little rule at a time, until suddenly, you're afraid to wave to your neighbor with the wrong color cup. But we didn't let it slide. We fought back, not with anger, but with community, solidarity, humor, and a whole lot of caffeine. So let me ask you, what would you have done? Ever been hit with a ridiculous rule that made you question reality? Drop your thoughts below. Share your own stories of fighting back against the small tyrannies of life. Because at the end of the day, your porch should be peaceful, your coffee strong, and your HOA minding its own business. And if you ever find yourself the target of a clipboard crusader, document everything, gather your people, and remember, common sense always tastes best when it's served with a side of freedom. Until next time, what's the wildest HOA rule you've ever heard? Let's hear it in the comments. And if this story perked you up, hit that like, maybe subscribe for the next one. The fight for front porch freedom continues, one mug at a time.